The thought of having sales calls for many online coaches brings on this feeling of dread and worry. And more often than not, it's either A, because they don't have a process to follow. And so it brings on this feeling of anxiety and overwhelm. Or B, they do have a process that they follow, but it's not in congruency and alignment with their values and who they are as an individual. And it just feels a little bit icky. Well, I've used a 7-part sales process for the last probably 10 years of online entrepreneurship. And it has helped me close hundreds of high ticket coaching clients. And it's also helped my clients close hundreds, if not thousands, of high ticket coaching clients. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the entire sales process. I call it the laid back sales method. I'm going to show you the 7 parts. I'm going to dig into each part in lots of detail. I'm going to give you examples of what to say at what point, and then you can just adapt this for your own business, your own coaching model, and you can go and have some really fun, enjoyable sales conversations that get you clients. So part number 1 is building rapport. Number 2 is setting the agenda with the prospect. Number 3 is discussing their dream outcome. 4 is their current reality. 5, we're going to stretch the gap. 6, we're going to make them audition. And then finally, we're going to make the offer and we're going to kind of pitch them with a deck. So if you're ready to get stuck into this, if you want this workbook, I will link it in the top line of the description of this YouTube video. It's housed in my school community. If you go into the YouTube resources section in there, you'll be able to download the workbook for this video. Building rapport, okay? Building rapport is something that, a lot of people kind of skim over, but if you get this bit right, it kind of sets the precedence for the rest of the conversation, and it means the rest of the conversation flows naturally. Really, the goal here is just to lower the sales resistance on the prospect's end, and it's also to kind of reduce your nerves on your end, right? Because when you go into a sales conversation, if you go in with the mentality of, I'm here to close a deal, I'm here to make money for my business, you get in this kind of heightened state of awareness, and you start stuttering your words, coming across like a bit of a weirdo, and nobody wants that. Key here is don't play the overexcited, over-friendly salesperson. You don't want to be this guy here. We'll experience this guy, the guy who does the door-to-door sales, knocks on doors. Hey there, madame, nice to see you today. What are you up to? And it's like this over-friendly, overbearing. You can tell instantly that this is a salesperson, and it gets the prospects resistance up. Okay, so we don't want to do that. So instead, we just want to be super chill, and you want to have the mentality of this prospect is very fortunate to have your time to potentially help solve the problems that they have. Okay, you are the expert in demand. This prospect has got time with you in your calendar to speak through potentially solving their problems. So you kind of want to take the power back and the control of the situation. So the second piece that we're going to look at is setting the agenda. And often when clients start working with me and I review sales calls, which I do from time to time, you find that they don't actually lay out at the beginning of the conversation what to expect for the prospect. And this does a few things. When you set the agenda, you take the lead and you explain how your process for the sales conversation works. And it kind of puts the ball in your court to lead the conversation and shows that there is a framework that you are following. And the reason this is important is it stops the prospect from hijacking the conversation. Maybe you've experienced this in the past. You jump on a sales call with a potential client and they just yap on and on and on and on, and 45 minutes have gone by and you haven't had a chance to do any of the stuff that you need to do to close the deal. And you've got to get off the call and speak to the next person or whatever. So an example of this is, so we've got heaps to get through today. I've only got 45 minutes before my next meeting. Is it okay if we jump straight in and I'll explain how this call goes? They'll say something like, sure. You can say something like, great. The call usually lasts between 30 to 45 minutes. We'll spend a bit of time talking about your goals, your struggles, and if I feel like I can help you, I'll explain how my program works. Assuming it's something you're looking for, I'll run you through the investment options that I have available for us to work together, and we can go from there. Is that cool? And typically they'll come back and they'll say, that's awesome. We've set the agenda. They know what to expect. And then you can dive into the first part of the actual sales call, which is what we're going to come on to next. Okay, so we're getting into the meat and bones of the actual sales conversation now. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the client's dream outcome. So the way that I typically position this is as follows. So first question I'd like to ask is, what's the dream outcome for you over the coming year or so if we do work together? How will you be looking? How will you be feeling? How will you be operating? What's the ideal scenario for you? Now, obviously, you can tweak this dependent on the niche that you're in, the type of client that you work with. I think in the example that I'm using here in this sales conversation, we're going to imagine that you are speaking to a potential fitness client or a weight loss client. If I was doing this with a potential business coaching client, I would tweak that question to make sure that it's relevant, obviously, to what I coach. Get people to think big before they start talking about their current reality. And this is really important because we want people to give you the biggest pie in the sky aspirations and goals that they could possibly think up. But it's really important that as we're going through this process and they're explaining to you what their dream outcome is, we are practicing active listening. So we're taking notes on our iPad or on our sketchbook next to us. We are complimenting them, nodding, agreeing, and perhaps we're even repeating back in our own words wherever it feels necessary. Also, one other thing that we can do at the dream outcome point of the conversation, if it feels appropriate to, is just ask them, just out of interest, why now? Why is this important to you now? And the reason that I like to line this question up is because typically a really common objection that you'll get on a sales call is, I just need to go and think about it. What we are doing is we are preemptively squashing the I need to go and think about it objection, or I might start this in a couple of weeks' time by asking this question proactively. Okay, so the next part of the 7-step framework in the layback sales method is discussing their current reality. So we've just spoken about their dream outcome, the big thing that they want to achieve whilst working with you. Now we're going to ask where they're at now. So the way that I do this is I say, so I just want to learn a little bit more about your current situation so I can understand where we're starting from and where we're trying to get to. Now, some example diagnostic questions that we can ask at this point to find out where they currently are. And we're going to keep this on the kind of fitness and weight loss theme and niche, but again, adapt this to your niche. How would you rate your happiness and your physical appearance on a scale of 1 to 10? If I was to adapt this for a business niche, it might be like, how would you rate your current satisfaction with your revenue each month on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you rate your relationship with food/diet on a 1 to 10 scale? How would you rate your energy levels 1 to 10? How would you rate your confidence on a scale of 1 to 10? What I'm essentially doing right now is I'm asking leading questions to get the prospect to relay to me their current reality and situation. You can leave this as an open-ended question where you just say like, explain to me your current situation, how you're feeling about your fitness and your training and your nutrition and body image and all that stuff. But the problem with that approach is that people are often quite reserved in these situations. So if you give them the questions, the leading questions to actually think more deeply about how they feel in all of these areas, we often get better outcomes at the end of the sales call. We now know what the dream outcome is of that prospect. We know what their current reality is, what their current frustrations and struggles are. What we're going to do now is stretch the gap. And this is such a key part of the sales call because when we stretch the gap, we get the prospect to realize that they're actually quite far away from their dream outcomes. And this importantly creates a need for your coaching and for your program. So I like to do this visually on the iPad, on the screen with the client. And the way that I do this is I have a page in my workbook on my iPad. And when they talk to me about their current reality, how many leads they're getting right now, how much cash they're making, how much free time they've got, how much impact they're having on clients. And then we've also spoken about what their dream outcomes are, so the things that they'd like to achieve in the next year or so. We're basically visually stretching this gap between where they are and where they want to be. And again, this is making a need for your coaching and for your program. So if you can create a visual like this in your document, in your sales document that you present to the prospect on the call, it has a huge impact on stretching the gap. Now we're moving on to audition. And this is such a key player in this sales call process for changing the power dynamic of the conversation, because quite often when you have a conversation with a potential client, there's this feeling of like the power is in the client's hand. You need them, you need their money, they don't need you. And it feels like you're kind of doing this big song and dance and auditioning for them, please hire me as your coach kind of vibe, when actually the roles should be reversed. So the way that I like to do this is say something along the lines of, okay, so I like to ensure that anyone that I bring on board is actually in a position to implement the program and get the result that they came for. So I just like to ask a few questions to determine if you're actually a fit to start. They say, sure, that's fine. And then we go on to ask them some qualifying questions that make it feel as though they are auditioning to work with us, not the other way around. So some examples of those questions might be, if we work together, can you commit 3 or more hours a week to following a bespoke program that I create for you? How many times per month do you eat out, order in on average? Will you have access to a well-equipped gym, or are you willing to invest in a membership? Are your family and friends aware of the process that you want to undertake? Are they supportive of your goals? Do you feel ready and excited to make a lasting change and achieve the results that we spoke about earlier? So I'm actually now positioning the coaching program in a way where they have to qualify to come in, and I don't just take anyone and everyone. And this is really, really key. It's kind of like we are making ourselves like Simon Cowell. The keys are in our hands. Okay. And the whole point of this process is to position you as the expert in demand. That's what we're trying to do. Final piece of this 7-part process is the pitch and offer. What we want to do at this point is take everything that we've spoken about. We've collected all of this data on the client. You feel as though you can help them. That's a really key point, by the way. If at this point of the sales conversation, you think, actually, do you know what? I'm not entirely sure that this person's the right fit for the program. It's really important that you let them know as such and you refer them out to somebody that you might think would be a better fit for them. Don't just take people on for the sake of it, because it's going to cause you headaches down the line and it's going to tarnish your brand and your reputation in the long run. The way that I do this is I just say something like, great, I'd love to work with you. I'm confident that I can help you with everything we've discussed today. If it's cool with you, I'm going to show you how X program works. Okay. And then they'll, of course, say yes. Now, it can be really useful at this point to have some sort of pitch deck. Now, I do this on the iPad. I have the offer up on the screen. I have the features and the benefits of what they're going to get so they know exactly how the program works. I explain what happens the moment they check out and they start onboarding, so that we're removing any doubt and we're closing all of the loops in the prospect's mind. So this is all visually displayed in a pitch deck to explain exactly what happens with all of the offers on the screen. And then I basically just ask them, does that sound like what you're looking for to get started? And then they'll say, yes, that's amazing. And then we talk about the investment, what works for them, and we get them signed up. Now, there is obviously a bonus part to this, and that is objection handling. I'm probably going to make a complete separate video on objection handling in its entirety, because it's such a complex topic. But this gives you the 7-part framework to follow for your sales conversations. It feels super fun, super relaxed. That's why we call it the laid back sales method. If you've enjoyed this, make sure you leave a comment below. Go and grab the workbook so that you can refer back to the notes, make your own version, and I will see you on the next video very soon. Peace and love.